module, and over here I have a target machine, which is a stapler of the one hub, which his name is red. And over here, जो हम आज topic cover करेंगे, that would be our enumeration topic. तो अगर मैं word normal enumeration की बात करूँ तो इसका मतलब होता है data extraction और data revealing part. So our main objective of this machine would be how we can simply enumerate the database services. So if you see over here, in the earlier process like footprinting and scanning, we have understood how to collect information about any of the organization, target website, or the particular network. We have also discussed several tools that can be helpful in collecting the information. So you can see they have given the information like to observe or gain information. This information is sensitive such as your network information, your network resources, routing paths, your SNMP, your DNS, and other protocols related information. And there are many more that we can use for sensitive information. So हमारा जो टारगेट है आज का जो टॉपिक का वो है हमारे एक्सट्रैक्ट इंफॉर्मेशन गैदरिंग और कैसे हम तरीके से कर सकते हैं. जैसे कि अगर आप यहाँ पे देखो एनुमेरेशन का जो कॉन्सेप्ट होता है वो आपका एक्टिव रिकग्निशन में आता है और कौन कौन सी इंफॉर्मेशन को रिलीव करता है मैं आपको बताता हूँ. इन फेज ऑफ एनुमेरेशन एन अटैकर इनिशिएट्स एन एक्टिव कनेक्शन with the target system. With this active connection, direct queries are generated to gain more information. This information helps to identify the system attack points. Once an attacker discovers any attack points, it can be also gained for unauthorized access and using this collected information to reach assets. जैसे कि अगर मैं बात करूँ यहाँ पे अगर आप देखो कौन कौन सी information निकाल सकते हैं, routing information, SNMP, simple network management protocol information, DNS information, machine names, user informations, group information, applications and banner, network sharing information, and network resources. For example, मैं यहाँ पे जो टॉपिक ले रहा हूँ एनुमेरेशन का, जिसमें अगर इंफॉर्मेशन की बात करें तो टेक्निक्स हम ईमेल्स के थ्रू भी इंफॉर्मेशन गैदरिंग कर सकते हैं. क्योंकि बहुत सारे टाइम में क्या होता है कि अगर कोई स्पेसिफिक ईमेल आ रहा है तो वो एक स्पेसिफिक पर्सन के नेम से भी आ रहा होगा. Extracting of information using email IDs can provide useful information like username, domain name, etc. For example, अगर आप खुद ही सोचो, if we are getting an email information, for example, any of the companies, domain name, just like you can say craw.in. So email of craw.in, what could be the email address? So it could be like, let's take my example. It could be brian@craw.in. So यहाँ पे जो specific domain से related जो हम identify करते हैं, ये हर एक कंपनी का अपना domain ID नंबर होता है. जैसे कि मैं यहाँ पे craw.in की बात कर रहा था. जैसे कि अगर बात करो आप Microsoft की बात करो, माइक्रोसॉफ्ट का खुद का होगा, यानी कि यहाँ पे बिल गेट्स की बात हो रही है. So यहाँ पे जो इंपॉर्टेंट चीज दे रखी है, an email address containing username and domain name in it. ईमेल के थ्रू इंफॉर्मेशन गैदरिंग करना. अगर मैं बात करूँ एनुमेरेशन यूजिंग डिफॉल्ट पासवर्ड, सबसे ज्यादा हम लोग मिसकॉन्फ़िगर्ड होते हैं इसमें. क्यों? Because we never change the password and the password should be in default state. Another way for enumeration is using default password. Every device and the software has a default credential and settings. These default settings and configurations are recommended to change. Some administrators keep using default passwords and settings. It can be easy for an attacker to gain unauthorized access using the default credentials. Default credentials की अगर मैं बात करूँ, जैसे कि यहाँ पे देखो, यहाँ पे एक मेरा रेड सर्वर चल रहा है. This is my IP address. तो सबसे पहले मैं अगर लिनक्स में देखूं एज एन अटैकर पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू की बात करते हैं. सो लेट्स फाइंड द IP address. So I'm going to use nmap-sn and the subnet mask. So before that, do route-n to check the gateway IP. So the gateway IP is 192.168.0.1, and over here we're gonna use sn pings. So let's do it. Let's check what other number of devices are connected with that specific network part. So the sn command has been completed, and you can see the 192.0.1 has unknown, and there is 103, which is your Sony mobile communication, 105, which is your AshuTech, and 115, which is your Oracle virtual box. And this will be our testing part. 105. So this IP address is 105 over here. And the most important part, when you're doing something enumeration part, you have to scan the entire network device. For example, अगर मैं बात करूँ SMB की, SMB enumeration, server message block, तो यहाँ पे थोड़ा सा मैं एक वेबसाइट जाना चाहूँगा. So I'm going to use SMB enumeration. So यहाँ पे बहुत सारी चीजें देखिए, जैसे यहाँ पे मीडियम की वेबसाइट दे रखी है by अर्नब त्रिपाठी, or you can see a little guide of SMB enumeration by hacking articles. They have given some PWK notes. So सबसे पहले तो पता होना चाहिए कि SMB का काम क्या है. यहाँ पे 3 different parts दे रखे हैं. And some PWK parts. तो अगर आप यहाँ पे देखो, यहाँ पे कुछ डेटा जैसे चेकलिस्ट, टूल्स, डिटेल्स, एनुमेशन, होस्ट नेम, NLP lookup, list of shares, check null session, check for vulnerabilities, overscan, manual inspection, and Samba. So they have given some commands over here, but what are these commands? अगर list shares देखने हैं तो list shares होते हैं पहली बात तो enumerate host name, NLP lookup. तो सबसे पहले जो इम्पोर्टेंट है कि एक सांबा सर्वर क्या होता है, जो मैं यहाँ पे टॉपिक आज का है. सांबा सर्वर जो होता है आपका सर्वर मैसेज ब्लॉक. तो अगर आप थोड़ा सा और यहाँ पे SMB एनुमेशन हैकिंग आर्टिकल्स की वेबसाइट अगर मैं थोड़ा सा अगर जाऊँ, so I want to read about the port 4445. इंट्रोडक्शन ऑफ SMB प्रोटोकॉल. तो ज्यादा हम लोग सब बेसिक डेफिनेशन पढ़ेंगे कि एक्चुअली काम कैसे करता है. तो SMB जो एनुमेशन है आपका, वो आपका बेसिकली यूज होता है फाइल शेयरिंग सिस्टम. अगर आप यहाँ पे देखो, कॉमन इंटरनेट फाइल सिस्टम, एंड दिस बेसिकली वर्क्स ऑन द एप्लीकेशन लेयर ऑफ द नेटवर्क प्रोटोकॉल, व्हिच इज बेसिकली यूज्ड फॉर शेयरिंग फाइल्स and which allows the application on the computer to read and write the files on a server in a specific LAN network. And SMB protocol basically works with the client and server protocols. SMB functions are request response with the client and server. The only time that a protocol does not work is in response to request framework, and it is also a client request operations. And one more thing, जो आपके SMB के version होते हैं, each and every SMB version has a different operating system plus the Windows server. See this one, SMB version 1, which was the very first one, and this was the most common vulnerable. Why? Because over that time there was running Windows 2000, Windows XP, Windows Server 2003, and Windows Server 2003 R2. SMB 2, Windows Vista, and Windows Server 2008. SMB 2.1, they are using Windows 7 and Windows Server 2008 R2. Windows 3, they are using Windows 8 and Windows Server 2012. If you check for Windows Server 3.2, you can see they are basically using 8.1 and Windows Server 2012 R2. And this version using Windows Server 2000 to Windows Server 2016 and Windows 10, you can see, which is right now we are using. But the most important part is to understand how the SMB protocol works, because each and every SMB version has a different kind of vulnerabilities. And you should know what are the protocols are running in each and every SMB server. For example, SMB enumeration, hacking articles. So over here, we're going to use NetBIOS also. So I was talking about the ports which works on the SMB protocol. There are only 5 ports over here, and there are 2 are UDP ports and 3 are TCP ports. So you can see 135, which is your TCP port, 137, which is UDP, 138 UDP, 139 TCP, and 445 is also our TCP port. And if you compare these things, two are the ports are UDP, which is constant value, 137 and 138, which is basically used for sharing file system in a local LAN network. 135, which is your MSRPC and endpoint mapper, which is basically used to assign a client to server communication for sending messages. 137, which is your NetBIOS name server. For example, my PC name is Ma, and over here you can see this PC name has red. (139) is as NetBIOS session services, means you can simply identify that's an active session, someone is logged in. And 445, which is your Samba protocol, which is basically used for transferring files from one network to a different network. And you can see one by one all the things as given. 135 is used for Microsoft remote procedure call between the client and the server to listen to the queries of the client. 137, the name servers works on the port 137. Add name, register to the NetBIOS name, group name, delete name, or find name. Because if I'm working with that specific domain, I might have a NetBIOS name which could be partho. 138, which is your datagram mode, which is basically used to share the file system between the two nodes. You can see send datagrams and send broadcast datagrams or receive datagrams. You can see. 137 is basically used for session mode. Let's two computers establish a connection, allows message to span. Call, listen, hang up, send to act or receive the files. But the most important port on the Samba protocol is your port number 4445. And you can see it is used for SMB protocol, server message block, for sharing files between different operating systems like your Windows to Windows, Unix to Unix, and Unix to Windows. And there are various types of methods that can be used for exploiting SMB server. You can see over here, they have given. But the most important part is to understand, if you're scanning for NetBIOS name services, you have to scan the ST and SU, which stand for TCP and UDP port, as they have assigned over here. And one more thing, NetBIOS, which controls all the services in the local server, covers all the different services. NetBIOS is a service which allows communication between applications such as printer and other computers in the Ethernet and a total ring part. For example, you can see I am connected with that specific domain, but I doesn't know what are the services are running in this specific Kali Linux. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a command called netstat. But before netstat, let's look men, which is manual. Netstat prints all the info in network connection, routing tables, interface statics, security connections, and multicast memberships. You can see one by one all the things over here. So the most important part is to check the application which is running. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use netstat again, and I'm going to use -help to check what are the functions I'm going to use. So over here, I'm not going to use any of the interface, but I'm going to use default ones. And over here, I'm going to use, you can say, -n, only the numeric IP address, don't dissolve names. You can see -p, I'm going to use for process ID number, what are the applications are running. I'm going to use -t, which stands for TCP, -u, which stands for UDP. And I'm going to use -a also, which is your display all sockets, which are connected over there. So let's see over here, netstat ANT-UP. So when I use ANT-UP according to the applications over here, I can see the TCP protocols are running and the UDPs also. The number of packet which is receiving and sending. And over here, this particular is for my local address, which is my Kali Linux, and this is the foreign address which is on the server side. And you can see the statement, are they are listing mode or they have established a connection, and the process ID numbers. And I can see on the back end that there is a post gray is running, which is a UDP port. and I can see some of the applications are running over there also. And DHCP is also running on the port number 68. You can see over here. So, okay, for the demonstration, what I'm going to do, I'm going to activate my service SSH start. Let's see this one. And let's start Apache also. Apache 2. So two of the applications are running in the backend, SSH and Apache. So let's see through the netstat. See, the SSH is running in the backend, and Apache is also running. So this is also a part of our enumeration to check what are the applications and services are running in a specific host on the network part.
सर एक डाउट है सर.
बिल्कुल बोलिए.
सर ये एस्टैब्लिश हुआ है ना सर, ये किस चीज के लिए एस्टैब्लिश हुआ है, मतलब कौन सा प्रोसेस?
मैंने यहाँ पे सर्विसेज एक्टिवेट किया अपने लोकल सर्वर में.
ओके.
जो कि एक एसएसएच था और एक अपाचे था.
हाँ वो तो लिसनिंग स्टेट में है ना सर, बट कुछ चल रहा है एस्टैब्लिश बता रहा है ना, वो पूछ रहा हूँ.
यहाँ पे जो ये जो एस्टैब्लिश बता रहा है आपको,
हाँ
यहाँ पे मेरी एक्यूनेटिक्स चल रही है एप्लीकेशन बैकएंड में.
क्या चीज है वो?
एक्यूनेटिक्स
कुछ सर्वर
एप्लीकेशन है आपकी.
ओके, एपीआई की तरह.
हाँ, नेसेस की तरह.
ओके.
तो यहाँ पे जो देख रहे हो कि आप नेटस्टेट के थ्रू आइडेंटिफाई कर सकते हो कि आपके बैकएंड में कौन कौन से सर्विसेज चल रहे हैं. जैसे कि अगर मैं यहाँ पे देखूँ, मैंने जब यहाँ पे एनमैप करेंगे हम 115 को, तो यहाँ पे जो मैं कर रहा हूँ, यहाँ पे मैं सिंपल आई नीड टू आइडेंटिफाई स्पेसिफिक पोर्ट जो कि मेरा पोर्ट नंबर 139 होगा और एक पोर्ट होगा 445 और सर्वर की आईपी एड्रेस. और -, ओपन. मैं यहाँ पे -, ओपन क्यों देख रहा हूँ, क्योंकि अगर वो ओपन स्टेटमेंट है तो आप मुझे दिखाना, अदरवाइज नो. और मैं यहाँ पे -T4 भी यूज करूंगा. देखते कि पोर्ट ओपन है कि नहीं, है ना. तो अगर मैं यहाँ पे देखूँ उस सर्वर में पोर्ट नंबर 139 ओपन है, आपका नेट बायोस सर्वर. सम close port may be reported as filtered due to defeat RST rate limits. Not shown one port filtered, that was 445. But over here I can see the port number 139 was open there. Or you can simply use multiple operating systems, just like these are TCP ports. So these were ST ports. And you can remove this and hit enter. So अब क्या होगा कि ये सारे के सारे TCP पोर्ट्स को स्कैन करेगा उस सर्वर में. जैसे कि यहाँ पे मैं देखूँ, यहाँ पे FTP पोर्ट भी ओपन था, SSH पोर्ट भी ओपन था, हमारा 53 DNS पोर्ट भी ओपन था, 80 पोर्ट ओपन था, 139 पोर्ट, 66 और यहाँ पे MySQL भी ओपन था. देख रहे? तो यहाँ पे अगर मैं एसएमबी एनुमेशन करूँ जिसमें एक ही पोर्ट ओपन है जो कि है 139. लेट्स ट्राई टू एनुमेट दिस वन. इसमें हम क्या क्या कर सकते हैं, जैसे कि यहाँ पे मैंने कुछ साइट्स खोल रखे हैं जिसमें मल्टीटास्किंग करेंगे थोड़ा सा. जैसे इसमें पूरा दे रखा है SME stand for server message block is a protocol for sharing resources like files, printer in generally any resource which should be retrievable on made by reliable. It will primarily use port 445 and 139 Samba depending on the server. So अगर आप यहाँ पे थोड़ा सा देखो, they are also using the Nmap scan to identify the SME protocols. So in this thing, they are using Nmap scripting engines, NSE. It is a very powerful feature of Nmap, would to probably require a separate articles to demonstrate it's useful. So you can see they are using SC and -P and SV also to check the service plus version. You can use it for advanced scanning part. जैसे कि अगर आप यहाँ पे देखो, मैं अगर ये यूज करता हूँ Nmap SC, SV, and which port they are using? They are using specifying the port 139 and 445. So -port 139 ये open है उसमें, and -key4 and the IP address. So यहाँ पे जो SC है, skip scan use हो रहा है यहाँ पे, and SV serviceless version and -p port number. तो यहाँ पे देखते हैं कि नेट बायोस में क्या क्या इन्फॉर्मेशन मिल सकती है. और enumeration phase, you have to extract each and everything on a specific port. There are lots of other tools that we can use for extracting the information. Okay, so almost the scan has been done. See, 139 is running properly. NetBIOS, Samba, SMD, 4.3.9, Ubuntu, and the work group. The work group is all about the domain group. अगर आप यहाँ पे देखो nbt stat netbios name जो है आपका red है सर्वर का, OS Windows 6.1 और Samba वर्जन आपका दे रखा है, कंप्यूटर नेम इज red, और यहाँ पे आपका SMB वर्जन जो यहाँ पे मिला है, ये SMB वर्जन 1 से चेक कर रहा है, देख रहे हो, ये SMB वर्जन 1 है आपका, दैट्स व्हाई यू कैन सी दिस वन.
हेलो सर, वेटिंग रूम में टर्न आया हुआ है, एक बार उसको एंटर करा दो.
So you can see SMB security mode, जहाँ पे SMB वर्जन 1 है यहाँ पे, और मैंने यहाँ पे क्या यूज किया था, nmap SC और SP एक्सट्रैक्ट करने के लिए इंफॉर्मेशन. तो एक अटैकर क्या कर सकता है, सिंपली इस Windows 6.1 और SMB 4.3.9 की वल्नरेबिलिटी चेक कर सकता है गूगल में. Or you can see the Windows Metasploit Rapid 7. There are many websites that can be used for. You can see the Metasploit arbitrary module load. This is for Samba 3.0 and Samba 4.14, or this is all about, if you're using a public exploit, it's all about hit and trial, error and trials. And if you go for the Samba is known IP pipe name, you can read also the vulnerability that was introduced on this 2017. This module triggered an arbitrary shared library load vulnerabilities in Samba version 3.5.0. This module requires valid credentials, a writable folder in the accessible share, knowledge of the shared path. So we're going to enumerate this also. In some cases, anonymous access combined with the common file system. What is the use of anonymous access? Anyone?
Without any credentials.
Without any credentials, yes. Without any credentials, an attacker or any of the person on that network can gain access without a username and password, because there is no password set over there. So in this scenario, we're gonna look for all the things one by one. For example, you can use nbt scan, or we can simply jump for the tables that we're gonna learn today. So first of all, we're gonna use some tools like this. There are around 6-7 tools. For example, the very first tool that we're gonna use, you can see enumeration is very essential phase of penetration testing, because when a pen tester establishes an active connection with the victim, then he tries to retrieve as much as information as machine with the use of useful exploits further. So you can see one by one all the things like your content of the tables, like your NNB lookup. What is the use of NNB lookup? NNB lookup is basically one of the tools used for check the server is register to which domain or which department. अगर मैं बात करूँ मुझे मैं पेन टेस्टिंग कर रहा हूँ किसी एक नेटवर्क पे, तो मुझे अगर कोई सिस्टम मिल गया तो सबसे पहले तो मुझे ये चेक करना है कि वो कौन से डोमेन में है, वो अकाउंट डोमेन में है या वर्किंग डोमेन में है या एडमिन डोमेन में या सेल्स डोमेन में या लोकल डोमेन में. Anonymity lookup is used to query NetBIOS names and map the IP address in the network using NetBIOS queries. So we're going to use anonymity lookup to check what are the, is it running in a specific domain or not. So मैं अगर यहाँ पे देखूँ anonymity lookup -a and I'm going -b for verbose and IP address. Version is 4.9. Okay, that's cool, but we're gonna use verbose. So over here अगर आप देखो जो आपका ये जो सर्वर दिखा रहा है रेड, ये आपके कुछ कोड्स यहाँ पे डोमेन नहीं दे रखा, यहाँ पे सिर्फ कोड दे रखे 00 का मतलब क्या होता है 03, 20, 01. These are some codes that can be useful. For example, compare this one. 00 is your workstation, means the server is running. 03 is your Windows Messenger services, that it could be used for deploying or committing up. 20 over here is for file services. A record of files are there. It's a Samba server, that's why. 01. 01 is basically used for your MS group services, your like a normal thing. 00, again you can see this is also work services over here for work group. 1D. 1D is your master browser, and 1E for browser services election. But master browser links is communicating with the WebKit, that the web server you can say. And over here you can see that they are also using the anonymity lookup for identifying. But if you try this command, the anonymity stat, there's a command called anonymity stat, which is basically used to check the specific server which is registered to a specific domain or not. There are various types. For example, अगर आप यहाँ पे देखो anonymity scan सबसे ज़्यादा यूज होता है आपके NetBIOS नेम सर्वर्स को आइडेंटिफाई करने के लिए उस लोकल नेटवर्क में. आप anonymity scan के थ्रू सारे के सारे नेटवर्क को स्कैन कर सकते हो कि किसी भी सर्वर में 139 और 445 पोर्ट ओपन है कि नहीं, तो उसके नेम सर्वर जो कि इसका नाम आपको शो कर देगा. This is a command utility that tries to scan the NetBIOS name services open on local or a remote TCP/IP network. So अगर मैं यहाँ पे anonymity scan यूज करता हूँ, anonymity scan -g और -r भी यूज कर लेते हैं, रेंज देना है हमें /24. See, तो ये पूरे नेटवर्क को स्कैन करेगा, उसमें दिखाएगा कि कौन कौन से सर्वर्स में ये आइडेंटिफाइड है. जैसे कि अगर आप देखो ये मेरे लोकल सर्वर में भी दिखा रहा है कि वहाँ पे एक डेस्कटॉप चल रहा है. 105 इज माय बेस मशीन आईपी एड्रेस. बट हमारी जो विंडोज जो हमारा टारगेट है वो हमारा 115 है और मशीन नेम रेड यहाँ पे है. Otherwise, you can remove the -v. And over here, you can also see the name services, just like my desktop and the red server. And it will examine only the server which has a port number 139 and 445 are open. When you examine, there is a Samba server. You can simply try to communicate with your local machine. For example, अगर आप यहाँ पे देखो, it is the first step in finding open shares. It is created on functionality of the Windows NBT stack, and it works on a Bool subnet. Through the NBT scan, you can identify which are the Samba servers on the local network. So through that Samba server, we can enumerate one by one all the services on the specific domain or a department or the environment, you can say. So for example, they have given, you can simply check one by one over here. Otherwise, when you find there is a Samba server just like 115 given, you can try to jump to the SMB map. SMB map is basically used to allow to show you the file shares on the network device. You can see assembly map allows user to enumerate Samba shared drives across the entire domain and lists shared drives and drives in permissions and drive contents. And if you know the domain, you can use the -d, specify the domain name, and if you know the credentials, you can use -u and the password. For example, see this one. I'm going to use assembly map -h, the host and the IP address, to check the number of file sharings. कौन कौन से फाइल शेयर हो रहे हैं उस नेटवर्क में उस स्पेसिफिक सर्वर से. तो डिफॉल्टली ये पोर्ट 444 को लेता है. तो आप यहाँ पे क्या करोगे, -p और 139 कर दोगे, जो कि उसमें पोर्ट ओपन था. See over here, I have some output from the server side. जिसमें से एक print डायरेक्टरी है जिसमें no access लिखा हुआ है, कैथी डायरेक्टरी है जिसमें read only लिखा हुआ है, और एक temp डायरेक्टरी दे रखा है जिसमें read and write की परमिशंस है, और एक IPC है जिसमें no access दे रखा है. IPC यानी कि हमारा सांबा सर्वर. You can simply identify with the help of assembly map what are the share file folders are available over there, and we can use it for information gathering part. For example, you can see there's a Cathy, there's a folder called Cathy which has a read permission, and there is a temp file which has a read and write permissions. So अगर आप यहाँ पे -r यूज करते हो, -r क्या करेगा, ये सारे के सारे फाइल को आपको पाथ दिखा देगा. जैसे कि यहाँ पे एक मिनट, the path of the file. So I will say -r में क्या बता देगा कि कौन कौन से फाइल उस शेयर फोल्डर में शेयर हो रहे हैं. You can see -r path of each and every directory on the server side. So जैसे कि अगर आप यहाँ पे देखो, कैथी डायरेक्टरी में यहाँ पे ओनली रीड ओनली था. यहाँ पे एक फोल्डर था, डायरेक्टरी है जो कि है कैथी स्टफ, और एक बैकअप फोल्डर. तो अगर आप यहाँ पे देखो, इसने कैथी स्टफ में जाके देखा कि उसमें एक और फाइल थी, टू डू लिस्ट .txt फाइल, और यहाँ पे बैकअप में देख सकते हो कि बैकअप में यहाँ पे आपकी दो फाइल्स हैं, जो कि आपकी vspd config फाइल है और एक wordpress.tar फाइल है. और यहाँ पे आपकी एक और फोल्डर था जो कि था आपका temp डायरेक्टरी, और यहाँ पे अगर आप देखो, यहाँ पे रीड एंड राइट की परमिशंस हैं. You can simply specify the full path if you are simply doing the assembly enumeration. There are various techniques that we can use. Or ये same technique that you can simply use it on your local server also. See this one. You can go to the other locations. In other location, you can see in the bottom they have given connect to the server. So what you can do, you can simply write SMB :/ and the server IP address to connect. See, I can see Cathy directory, I can see the temp directory. And if I open the Cathy directory over there, it's going to ask me a username and a password, an anonymous login and a registered username. So I doesn't know the username and password. So what we can do, we can go to the anonymous. We can try the default credentials. So let's try anonymous first of all. And I can see that I can access those files. So we are on the Cathy stuff directory, which was a file called to-do list. There is a simple text. I can access that file easily. Or you can simply go to the backup file and you can see some configuration files, just like your FTP configuration files. This file belongs to your FTP file, configuration file. You can see etc configuration files. The default compile if the settings are fairly paranoid. This example, the directive enables listening to the IPv6 sockets. Allow anonymous FTP, which is saying yes. This is a configuration file of your FTP server, and this FTP server was running on that specific server. FTP was owned. So how an attacker simply gain information? This is the challenging thing. Because on that FTP server, they're saying there is an anonymous access available. So what we can do, we can try to connect it with that server, FTP, and the port number of the server. Now he's asking me for the username. Let's use anonymous, and I'm going to use my name Partho as a password because it's basically asking for the anonymous user. And you can see that we are logging on the FTP server. There would be a file, or not to be. So if you check dir, you can see there is also one file which is not file. You can use ls-all also command. When you are in the FTP server, try to write question mark to check the allow applications, allow options over there. So अगर आप यहाँ पे देखो, यहाँ पे कुछ कमांड्स escalation दे रखा है, dir दे रखा है, आपकी md delete दे रखा है, qc दे रखा है, आपके sites दे रखे हैं. तो जैसे कि मैं अगर यहाँ पे बात करूँ, मैं यहाँ पे दे रखा है mkdir. Let's try to make a file mkdir. Let's make Partho. Permission denied. So over here we can try user. Let's check user. Okay, there's a FTP user, and I doesn't know any of the user over here. Login failed. So we have nmap, newer, ls command. Some of the attackers, they try to get the put command. Through the put command, अगर आपके पास put available है option, so you can specify any of the applications to be stored over there. I'm gonna use this one. Let's try this one. तो मैंने यहाँ पे सेम उसी की फोल्डर अपलोड करना करूँगा. तो मैं अगर यहाँ पे देखूँ, there is no file. But it's Samba share folder. Okay, let's try to upload any of the document files. Let's try picture folders. Let's try this one. No such directory. And I guess I don't have the permission. But over here, अगर आप यहाँ पे देखो, यहाँ पे get command था. Get command is get command. Get command is basically used to fetch the file from the FTP server. So if I use using get command, node.txt, you can see I have received the file. By defaultly, this file will be over my home directory. See. And there is also one message from the server sites. So there are various ways that we can use it for extraction part. Through SMB map, you can see the number of files which is available. Let's try this one again. Yes, you can see a proper way. Or you can try the SMB client, which is also your command line to share the files on the server side. You can simply use the GUI version, which is like this one. Or you can use the SMB client, SMB client is a client and that can be used for talk or SMB services. It offers like your FTP server, same your FTP server. But in this scenario, we're gonna enumerate what other services are running. For example, let's use SMB client -help. So मैं जो यहाँ पे यूज करूँगा, मैं यहाँ पे कैपिटल L यूज करूँगा because मुझे list of shares folders देखने हैं, get a list of share availables on the host, and I'm gonna use -n also for don't ask me for the password, यानी कि anonymous access की बात होगी. So the SMB client -l and the IP address. Okay, but sorry, यहाँ पे double forward slash देना है आपको, and -n. Don't ask me the password. So जो ये double forward जो slash यहाँ पे दे रखा है, यानी कि यहाँ पे क्या है कि one step आगे जाओ. जैसे कि अगर आप यहाँ पे देखो, सेम मुझे वही फोल्डर दिख रहा था, जैसे print directory, Cathy directory, temp directory, IPC directory, and you can simply see all the data over here. Let's try to communicate with the temp directory. So I'm going to remove the -l and I'm going to paste temp over here because we're going to access that temporary file. And if it doesn't use -n, they're going to ask you a password. But if you freely enter this one, you are in because there was no password set. There was no password set on the server side because it was all about anonymous access. तो अगर आप यहाँ पे ls-all करो, okay, यहाँ पे ls-all काम नहीं करेगा, so let's use question mark. So we can see we have a similar to FTP server, like this one. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use ls command. So is it ls available? Ls, yes, list shares. So ls, and I can see there are some files over there, like the ls file. So it's a file, not a directory. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use a get command, ls. So file has been transferred over there. Ls file. So we can see a proper part of the file over there, which is system private time synced file. So as an attacker, what I can do, I can use some files like permission like mkdir. Let's use mkdir. Let's use path ls, and I can see there is a folder named path over there. Let's use cd path. Yes, we are in. Let's use echo command. There's an echo command over there. So in an echo command, I can write whatever I want. So I can write hello everyone, and I can save this file over there with a test name. Okay, so the file was meant created. Okay, so the file is not able to create over here. So, but what I can do, I can use a put command. And in the put command, I'm gonna share one of the files over here, like this one. Let's see. To the put command, I'm sharing one file on this local server. Does not exist. Okay, so there is one tiny problem. So what I have to use, I have to open this SMB client on that specific server, just like over here. So let's open a new terminal over here. A new terminal, yes. So we're gonna specify this file. So I'm gonna use assembly client over here, assembly client, IP address, in the temp folder, ls cd partho ls. Okay, we're gonna use some put command. So now he's asking me which file I want to upload. So over here, what we can do, let's upload this file. So I'm gonna copy his name, the entire name, and over here I'm gonna paste it. Okay, should I change the name of this one? So let's change the name. That's right, HTTP. Sometimes the name server will error. Yes, so the access denied, opening remote file partho pinch. Okay, let's see. Okay, there's denying a file path. We are not able to create any file on the folder path over there. So let's see if I can put a file over here. So let's use the box. Now I can see the file has been transferred. We don't have the permission. Partho folder doesn't have the permission to upload the file. So if I do ls, I can see the file over there. So as per the specific folder, I will see the specific folder over there has a permission that we can use. So as an attacker can simply connect to that server and place a reverse shell or any kind of malware over there. If I have created any malware type, I can simply place this one on the server side because we have a permission of put command over there. And we can see the file is over there. For cross verification, I'm going to communicate with the server again through this command, and it was on temp directory, anonymous access, and I can see the file. So an attacker can place a malware, or we can see the folder over there. An attacker can simply place a malicious file on the server side, and it can be used for interact with that. There are various steps that we can follow to attack type. You can simply communicate with the assembly client, or you can simply use the GUI version. So सबको समझ आ रहा है मैं क्या करा रहा हूँ?
थोड़ा सा.
Everyone?
Yes sir.
समझ आ रहा है आप लोगों को?
हाँ थोड़ा बहुत सर.
थोड़ा बहुत. So there are lots of assembly client. You can see RPC client also. RPC client is also used for connecting with the server side. And there was a time that we can use RPC for communicating with the server. RPC client is a utility initially developed by a test MSRPC functionality in the Samba itself. And this command is basically used to communicate with their server, which is also used for null session. Null session is an attack where an attacker simply communicates with their drivers without a username and password. And if an attacker can communicate with their driver, they can simply mismanage or they can do unnecessary things. And RPC client is basically used to communicate with their specific drivers, application drivers. See this one. I'm going to communicate with the server, RPC client, with the -u. U stand for user. And I'm not going to use any of the username, so I'm going to blank this one. IP address. Now again, it's asking the password, enter, and I'm in. ls-all.
एक डाउट है सर.
Yes, बोलिए.
सर इसको पासवर्ड होगा तो क्या होगा, एंटर करना पड़ेगा ना?
हाँ एंटर करना पड़ेगा।
किप तो नहीं कर सकते।
Okay, why is ls command is not running? Command not found. Okay, wait. Let's use question mark. So through the question mark, I can see all the things one by one. और सबसे ज्यादा जो हम MSRPC का यूज करते हैं, हम लोग इसके लिए यूज करते हैं एनुमरेट डोमेन यूजर नेम्स, यूजर्स निकालने के लिए, उनके ग्रुप निकालने के लिए कौन कौन से ग्रुप है उन पे और कितने एलाइज है। जैसे कि अगर आप enum dim यूज करते हो, so you can use it for extract the user names, otherwise you can use the group domains, क्योंकि हर एक यूजर का एक स्पेसिफिक डोमेन डिपार्टमेंट एनेबल होता है यहाँ पे। यहाँ पे कोई भी नहीं है। Nope. डोमेन नेम, यस। सो डोमेन नेम मुझे जो यहाँ पे दिखेगा वो होगा रेड, यस, सर्वर का नाम। There are many other techniques that can be used for, and each and every services are unique over there. So the
सर मेरा एक
हाँ जी।
डाउट है सर, ये जो वर्जन है SMB 1 का है ना?
ये आपका
क्योंकि
SMB 1 का है।
क्योंकि SMB 3 पे तो ये एनोमनेस यूजर तो निकाल दिया।
This is an SMB version 1 server.
ओके सर।
Anonymous access now has been blocked, but some of the applications or some of the websites, they are using SMB version 1 for and they are not aware about these attacks.
यस सर, आई डू।
So
अभी भी थोड़े लोग SMB 1 पे चला रहे हैं ओल्ड एप्लीकेशन।
I will say most of the popular websites are still using SMB version 1. And there are lots of other things that can be completed over there. So the most important part is to gather or enumerate the information part that can be used in varieties of things. But we have done all these things in a manual way. It took us a lot of time. You can get all the information in a simple command. That command is known as, you can see if they are using enum dumps. Further, we had users enumerate user commands, and you can see the usernames well as RID and SID. See, it will show you all the usernames on the server side. Just like this one. We have to use the query user command to catch all the kinds of information related to the individual users based on the user RID. Relative identification in hexacolumn. 0x368 denote the user account. Okay, if I copy this one, this value, user query. Okay, there is no such user on the buffer memory 0x3x. But you have to try to check one by one. They have written 0x68, which denotes the user root account. RID stands for related identification number, which each and every users on the specific server has a different RID. For example, you can write ID over there, and you can check your RID, which is your 0, which is root user. You can simply cat etc password, and you can see all the things one by one, and you can see their RIDs, which is given right. RIDs are basically given to specify the user behavior or the user identification number. So there are lots of other techniques that can be used for identification numbers or information gathering part. We can try various techniques for that. But the most important part is to understand how the things works. Or the last thing that we can use is we have already used Nmap. Following the script attempt to detect the Microsoft Assembly version 1 server is vulnerable to remote code execution or not. We're gonna check this one in our upcoming session, which is your system hack. Let's see the last topic, which is your Enum for Linux. This is the most powerful tool till now. Enum for Linux is a tool for enumerating information from Windows and Samba systems. It attempts to offer similar functionality of enum.exe file. But the main function of Enum for Linux is to enumerate the RID cycling, the user listing files, the list of group members, the share enumerations, the detecting of the host is on a workgroup or domain, identify the remote operating system, and the password policy. So whatever the things we have done till now, it can be worked in a simple command. Which the command is enumerate for Linux. It will not work on the Windows server. And you can see over here, through the Enum for Linux, we can get the user list, we can get the machine list, we can get the number of shares available over there, get the password policy information, group informations, and many more things that we can do. So over here, what we're going to use, I'm not going to use all these commands one by one because it will make a long query. So for this case, I'm going to use -a, do all the simple enumeration USG PROI. So over here, we're going to use Enum for Linux -a and the IP address. If we are familiar with the Linux architecture, it will be easy for you to understand what is called RID, what is called SID, share identification, relative identifications. You can see whatever the things we have done in the very first stage, NBT stat, see? Then RID stands for 500 to 550 and 1000 to 1050. And those I have a constant value over there on the server. Session check, getting domain SID. Platform ID of red is 500, you can see. Look, share enumeration, we have done the share enumeration in manual way, like this one. Attempting to map shares on the server. Kathy denied. Kathy is okay for listening. Temp is also listening. And it can't understand the response. Don't have the permissions. Password policy reveals when was the last it is updated. And over here you can see the bulletins, groups, members. But the most important part is to identify the share identity. You look, red is nobody is a user on that server, which has 501, sorry. Which is, you can compare nobody is also a local user on that specific server. None, which is a group. Enumerating user SID numbers, share identification, see this one. Now we can see the workstations. Bulletin groups are like your administrator, your user, guest, power user, account operator, server operator, and print operator. There could be users in this specific domain. And we can see the RID, which has a constant value 544. This RID can be used for assigning a user to that specific domain or a group. And if you look over here, enumerating username which is SID. See, these are the local users that we want to get. The local user, which is Peter, Newmaker, Atron, and Swagger. These were the usernames, which is over on the server side. And one more thing, 1000 user, the 1000 SID is known as pseudo user. जिसके पास 1000 SID होगी वो आपका sudo user होगा उस specific server में, यानी कि root user होगा वो, क्योंकि आप इसको use कर सकते हो information gathering के part में.
Unix क्यों बता रहा है सर? Unix क्यों बता रहा है?
Linux and Unix are same interface, so यहाँ पे आपको Unix और Linux बता सकता है.
Okay.
तो अगर आप यहाँ पे देखो सारे के सारे यूजर्स आपको दिख रहे हैं, that we can use it for information gathering part. और सबसे ज़्यादा इम्पोर्टेंट है आपको अंडरस्टैंडिंग कि RID क्या होती है। आपको जिसके पास 1000 RID है वो आपका सूडो यूजर होता है। अगर आप खुद ये कंपेयर करो, लिनक्स में जो यूजर्स की परमिशंस होती है वो डिफाइंड होती है RID से। जैसे कि अगर मैं बात करूं जो रूट यूजर होता है उसकी RID होगी आपकी 0। लोकल यूजर विथ रूट परमिशन उसकी RID होगी आपकी 1000। लोकल यूजर विदाउट रूट परमिशन
500।
और अगर आप विंडोज की बात करो, विंडोज में हम RID को भी आइडेंटिफाई करते हैं। विंडोज यूजर RIDs, जो आपका एडमिन होता है उसकी RID होगी आपकी 500। लोकल यूजर, ओनली लोकल यूजर, उसकी RID होगी आपकी 1000। और जो गेस्ट यूजर होगा उसकी RID होगी आपकी 501। And each and every user has a different one. तो अगर वो लोकल यूजर आपका एडमिन है, एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर ग्रुप में, so उसकी RID हो सकती है आपकी 500 की रेंज। So this RID specify the rules and specify the comments that can be used in the scenarios. And this was all about your assembly animation, and there are lots of other animations also. If you search for animation topics, see this one. SNMP animation, simple network management protocol. Using SNMP is a process of gaining information through the net. Attacker use default community strings to guess the strings, extract information about the devices. Like SNMP managers, agents, and managers. MIB tree, management information base. Brute force attack on the Active Directory. Enumerating through DNS zone transfer. You can see all the things, and the port numbers are important. DNS zone transfer works on the port 83. SNMP works on the port 161. Trap works on 162. Microsoft RPC endpoint mapper works on 135. LDAP 389. 137. See, NetBIOS. So over here, you will see how we can give information. They have given case studies. In this lab, consider a network of 10 where different devices are running. We will enumerate services, ports, and operating systems. So here using SP, ping square, to identify the number of devices on that network. Performing a ping square on the subnet. Check the live host other basic information. For example, they are using SU for UDP ports to scan. SNMP works on the UDP ports 161. SS for sync scan. This result shows SNMP works on the port and is open and filtered. Now enter the command SS to perform a self scan on the target machine. See. SSV. Enter the command SSV operating system to check the service related versions. OSN version scanning. A NetBIOS animation that we have done today. Name servers, datagram services, session services. See this one. You have to understand the names and the hexacode and the information. 0001, 3036. See, there are lots of them, not one. See, these are the commands. You have to make a proper cheat sheet to understand. NetBIOS tools, they are using nbt.exe. You can use netstat, or you can use NNB lookup. See, in this they are using SuperScan tool for enumerating all the services on a Windows. So it depends on the server side to understand the things. See, You can use super scan. This is a Windows tool to identify the names of the assembly services. And there are many more that you can use over there. But the most important part is to understand those things one by one. So there are further tools that they're using the same tools again over here. For description, you can use, they have given the Hyena tool, the fingerprint tool, the NetBIOS. Hyena is also a GUI based NetBIOS animation tool that shares user login information and other related files. But they are using SuperScan. Or you can simply use NetView to check the share folders. But this is on the command line server. You can see username over here, NetView, and the number of share files, if they are sharing the file servers. So in this scenario, we have tried the most of the tools on our Windows. These are Linux-based tools. You can gather the informations. But the most important part is the countermeasures. This is important. LDAP animation, NNTP animations, SMTP animation, NetBIOS animations, disable SMB, disable NetBIOS, use network firewall, Windows firewalls, disable sharing. See, all the things are given over here one by one. And the most important part is to simply make a proper set of rules and a proper defense phase that can be used on itself. So this was all about this